The colony ship. New Dawn moved silently through deep space, carrying 3,000 sleeping souls toward their new home. Inside the cryo bay, families dreamed of fresh starts on a world far from Earth's crowded cities. They had no idea that something was watching them. The Vraxis had ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. They were massive creatures, standing 3 meters tall with 4 powerful arms and bodies covered in natural armor plates. Their culture revolved around one sacred tradition, the Great Hunt. Every season they would find new prey species, capture them, and release them on special hunting worlds. It was sport. It was honor. It was their way. War Master Krevik stood on the bridge of his hunting vessel, watching the human ship drift closer. His thermal eyes studied the scans with interest. These creatures were small, soft, and weak. No claws, no fangs, no armor. Their bodies were fragile, breaking easily under pressure. They were perfect prey. "These humans will bring great glory," Krevik said to his hunting party. "Look how defenseless they are. We will be legends after this hunt." The other Vraxis warriors clicked their mandibles in agreement. They had hunted hundreds of species across the stars. Some fought back with teeth and strength. Others tried to hide in burrows and caves. All of them died within days or weeks. The Vraxis always won. Krevik gave the order. His ship powered up weapons and disabled the New Dawn with a single electromagnetic pulse. The human vessel went dark, floating helpless in the void. Inside the colony ship, emergency lights flickered on. Taman woke first, his marine training kicking in before his mind fully processed what was happening. Alarms screamed through the corridors. He jumped from his cryopod and ran toward the security station. "What's going on?" Hiejin called out, his sister stumbling from her own pod nearby. "Stay down," Taman ordered, grabbing an emergency kit from the wall. But he had no weapons. Colony ships didn't carry military hardware. They were explorers, not soldiers. The hull groaned as something massive attached to the exterior. Then came the sound of cutting tools slicing through reinforced steel. Taman's stomach dropped. They were being boarded. Captain Jiwan's voice crackled over the intercom. "All personnel, this is not a drill. We are under attack by an unknown hostile force. Security teams converge on Deck 3. Everyone else, stay in your quarters and—" The transmission died. Taman grabbed Hiejin's arm. "We need to get everyone to the escape pods." But it was already too late. The Vraxis poured through the breached hull like a flood. They moved with terrifying speed, their 4 arms carrying weapons that fired bolts of superheated plasma. The few security officers who tried to resist were cut down in seconds. The Vraxis didn't even slow down. Taman watched from a hiding spot as these alien monsters swept through the corridors. They were enormous, each one towering over even the tallest human. Their armor made them look unstoppable. When one of them spotted a group of fleeing colonists, it didn't shoot. Instead, it studied them with cold, calculating eyes. "Good specimens," the creature said in a language Taman somehow understood. "These will run well." They weren't here to kill everyone. They were here to capture. Within an hour, the entire ship was under Vraxis control. The aliens gathered all 3,000 humans in the cargo bay, separating families and organizing them into transport groups. Taman stood among them, his mind racing. Hiejin clutched his arm, terrified. Nearby, he spotted Jiwan, bloodied but alive. The captain caught his eye and gave a subtle nod. They were both thinking the same thing. Stay alert. Wait for an opening. Young Minho stood trembling near the front of the group, his engineering uniform torn. Yuna, the ship's medical officer, was trying to comfort injured colonists with nothing but words. The Vraxis had taken everything. Krevik entered the cargo bay, and the other Vraxis warriors stepped aside respectfully. The War Master studied the humans with satisfaction. "I am Krevik," he announced, his voice booming through translation implants the Vraxis had injected into every human's neck. "You are now part of the Great Hunt. This is an honor. Your species has been chosen to test your survival against the greatest hunters in the galaxy." Murmurs of confusion and fear rippled through the crowd. "We will transport you to Hunting World Theta 9, Krevik continued. "You will be given time to run, to hide, to fight if you wish, and then we will hunt you. If you survive long enough, you will earn a place in our history. Most species last 3 to 7 days. I believe you humans will last 4, perhaps 5 if you are clever." "This is murder!" someone shouted from the crowd. Krevik tilted his massive head. "No, this is nature. The strong hunt the weak. You are weak. We are strong. This is the way of the universe." Taman felt rage building in his chest, but he forced it down. Anger wouldn't help now. He needed to think. He studied the Vraxis guards, counted their weapons, memorized the layout of their armor. Old habits from his military days took over. The transport took 2 days. The humans were crammed into holding cells aboard the Vraxis hunting vessel, given minimal food and water. Taman used the time to move through the crowds, quietly talking to anyone with useful skills. He found former soldiers, engineers, doctors, teachers. People who knew how to build things, fix things, organize things. Hyojin spent the time studying everything she could see through the cell bars. As a xenobiologist, she observed the Vraxis with scientific detachment, noting their movements, their behavior patterns, their physical capabilities. "They're ambush predators," she whispered to Taman during one of his visits. "Look at how they move. Short bursts of speed, then they rest. Their bodies aren't built for endurance." Taman filed that information away. Every detail mattered. When they finally arrived at Theta 9, the humans were herded into dropships and scattered across a massive forested continent. Taman's group of about 200 was dumped in a clearing and left with nothing but the clothes on their backs. As the dropship lifted away, a holographic projection of Krevik appeared in the sky above them. "The hunt begins in 5 hours," his voice echoed across the forest. "Use this time wisely. Run, hide, prepare yourselves. We are coming." The projection vanished. For a moment, nobody moved. 3,000 colonists spread across an alien world, facing certain death at the hands of creatures that had never lost a hunt. Then Taman stepped forward. "Listen to me," he called out, his voice carrying authority. "They think we're prey. They think we'll panic and scatter. That's what gets you killed. We stay together. We organize. We survive." Captain Jiwan emerged from the crowd. "Taman's right. I'm activating emergency protocols. Everyone form up by your original colony groups. We need a head count and a plan." Slowly, order emerged from chaos. Humans started doing what humans do best, adapting. Minho gathered anyone with technical knowledge. Yuna organized the medical personnel. Hyojin began studying the local ecosystem, and Taman started teaching people how to fight. 5 hours wasn't much time. But it was enough to begin. High above in orbit, Krevik watched the human settlement through surveillance feeds. He saw them organizing, planning, building shelters. He clicked his mandibles in amusement. "They think preparation will save them," he said to his warriors. "How cute. Begin the descent. Let us show these soft creatures what real predators look like." The hunting parties launched from the ship, descending toward the planet's surface like falling stars. The great hunt had begun, but Krevik had made one critical mistake. He assumed that because humans looked like prey, they would behave like prey. He had never asked why, on a death world called Earth, humans had no natural predators. He would learn the answer soon enough. The forest of Theta 9 was unlike anything from Earth. The trees grew thick and twisted, their bark a deep purple color that seemed to absorb light. Strange calls echoed through the canopy as native creatures moved in the shadows. The air smelled wrong, metallic and sharp. Taman didn't care about any of that. He was too busy turning terrified colonists into something resembling a fighting force. "Find rocks," he ordered, demonstrating with a stone he'd picked up. "About this size, with sharp edges. They're weapons now. Also find strong branches as long as your arm. We can make spears." A woman named Soman raised her hand nervously. "We have 5 hours before they come. Shouldn't we be running?" "Running where?" Taman asked calmly. "This planet is their hunting ground. They know it. We don't. If we scatter now, we die alone. If we stay smart, we might survive together." Hyejin approached with several colonists carrying armfuls of strange plants. "These are edible," she announced, having risked a small taste test on herself. "The protein content is similar to earth legumes, and these roots contain water. We won't die of thirst or hunger at least." Jiwon had organized people into groups of 20, each with a leader. She moved between them now, making sure everyone understood the plan. "When the Vraxis come, we don't engage directly. We observe, we learn, we see what they can do and what they can't do." Young Minho worked frantically with a team of engineers, using sharp stones to strip bark from trees and weave it into rope. It wasn't pretty, but it was functional. "We can make snares," he explained to anyone who would listen. "Traps. Even if they don't hurt these aliens, they might slow them down." Yuna moved among the groups, teaching basic first aid with the limited supplies they had. Pressure stops bleeding. Clean wounds with water. If someone gets hurt badly, bring them to me immediately. We don't leave anyone behind. The 5 hours passed too quickly. Taman stood at the center of the clearing, surrounded by 200 humans who now held crude weapons and looked slightly less terrified than before. He'd spread them out into the forest in small groups, each hidden and waiting. "Remember," he said quietly to the group leaders, "watch. Learn. Don't be heroes. We need information more than we need kills." The first sign of the Vraxis was a sound like thunder. Their dropships descended through the atmosphere, splitting up to hunt different human groups across the continent. Taman watched through the trees as one landed nearby, its ramp lowering with a hiss of hydraulics. 3 Vraxis warriors emerged, each carrying weapons that hummed with contained energy. They were even more terrifying up close. Massive, armored, built to kill. One of them activated a scanning device. "I detect 47 humans within 2 kilometers, it announced. "They are hiding in the forest. Clever, but pointless." The 3 hunters split up, moving through the trees with surprising grace for their size. Taman tracked the nearest one, staying downwind and keeping low. He watched how it moved, how it paused to scan, how it relied heavily on technology rather than natural senses. The Vraxis approached a spot where 5 colonists were hiding in a dense thicket. The humans stayed perfectly still, barely breathing. The alien's scanner beeped, pointing directly at their position. "Found you!" the Vraxis growled, raising its weapon. The humans scattered, running in different directions exactly as Taman had taught them. The Vraxis fired, its plasma bolts burning through trees and underbrush. It was fast, incredibly fast in short bursts. It caught one of the runners within seconds, grabbing him with 2 of its 4 arms. But then something unexpected happened. The Vraxis stopped to examine its catch, clearly savoring the moment. It wasn't trying to kill quickly. It was playing with its prey. Taman noted this. The Vraxis enjoyed the hunt. They weren't efficient killers. They were sport hunters who liked to draw things out. That was a weakness. Over the next hour, similar scenes played out across the forest. The Vraxis would detect humans, chase them down, and catch a few. But they weren't systematic about it. They were choosing the most entertaining hunts, ignoring easier targets in favor of more challenging ones. By nightfall, the Vraxis had killed 12 humans and wounded 20 more. Terrible losses, but not the massacre Krevik had expected. The alien hunters regrouped in the clearing, comparing their kills and boasting about their techniques. They set up a camp, posting guards while the others rested. Taman gathered his group leaders for a quiet meeting deep in the forest. "They're not invincible," he said. "They're strong and fast, but only in bursts. I watched one chase someone for maybe 30 seconds before it had to slow down and catch its breath." Hyejin added her observations. "They rely heavily on thermal scanning. That's how they find us." "But I noticed something. They have trouble with water. One of them hesitated before crossing a stream, like it couldn't see through it." "The weapons are energy-based," Minho chimed in. "I saw the power cells on their belts, maybe 8 shots before they need to reload, and the weapons take 3 seconds to charge between shots." Jiwon processed all this information. "So they're sprint hunters with limited ammunition and thermal-based tracking. What about their armor?" "Joints," Taman said immediately. "Neck, elbows behind the knees. The armor doesn't cover everything. It can't, or they couldn't move." Someone spoke up hesitantly. "Are we actually planning to fight them? I thought we were just surviving." Taman looked around at the faces watching him in the darkness. "Right now, we're learning. Tomorrow, we start testing what we've learned. Small things, safe things. We need to understand them completely before we can fight them." The next day, the hunt continued. But this time, the humans were ready. When a Vraxis hunter entered an area where Minho had set traps, it suddenly found itself tangled in vine ropes. The trap didn't hold it for long. The alien ripped free with ease. But those precious seconds allowed the nearby humans to escape. When another Vraxis tracked a group to a stream, the humans had already crossed and covered themselves in mud on the far side. The thermal scanner showed nothing. The confused alien wasted an hour searching the wrong area. A third Vraxis, chasing a lone runner through dense forest, stepped on a covered pit that Taman's team had dug. It wasn't deep enough to trap the creature, but it stumbled. And in that moment of imbalance, a heavy log swung down from the trees. The log hit the Vraxis in the side, right at a joint in its armor. The alien roared in pain and fury. It was just a bruise, but it was proof that humans could hurt them. By the third day, the Vraxis were growing frustrated. The hunts were taking too long. The humans weren't behaving like proper prey. They weren't panicking. They were thinking. Krevik watched from orbit, his satisfaction turning to annoyance. "They should be dying faster," he muttered. "Send more hunters. Double the ground forces." 20 additional Vraxis warriors descended to the planet. But Taman was ready for that, too. He'd spent the past 3 days organizing the scattered human groups into a network. Using runners who moved at night, they'd established communication between different areas. Now, over 2,000 humans were working together, sharing information about Vraxis patrol patterns and successful evasion tactics. Hyejin had mapped the local water sources and identified plants that could be used for camouflage. Minho had taught dozens of people how to make better traps using materials from Vraxis equipment they'd scavenged from abandoned campsites. Yuna had established 3 hidden medical stations where the wounded could recover. And Jiwon had done something remarkable. She'd organized the humans into a functional society even while being hunted. People had roles. Children were protected in the safest zones. Food and water were distributed fairly. Nobody was left behind. On the 4th day, something changed. A Vraxis hunter named Thrak was pursuing a human through the forest when he suddenly realized he'd been running for over a minute. The prey was still ahead of him, still moving. Thrak's muscles burned. His breathing was labored. How was this soft creature still running? He pushed harder, determined to catch this one. 2 minutes. 3 minutes. The human kept going, occasionally looking back to make sure Thrak was still following. Thrak's vision started to blur. His heart pounded. He had to stop, had to rest. The human disappeared into the trees while Thrak bent over, gasping for air. When he finally recovered and continued the hunt, he found something waiting for him. 20 humans stood in a semicircle, each holding a sharpened spear. They'd led him into an ambush. Thrak raised his weapon, but before he could fire, 3 spears flew through the air. One missed, one glanced off his armor. But the third found the gap at his neck joint. The Vraxis warrior fell, blue blood pooling beneath him. For the first time in the history of the Great Hunt, prey had killed a hunter. The humans didn't celebrate. They took Thrak's weapon, his scanner, and his communication device. Then they disappeared back into the forest. When the other Vraxis found Thrak's body, they stood in stunned silence. "Impossible," one of them whispered. But the evidence was right in front of them. In orbit, Krevik received the news with cold rage. "This changes nothing," he announced to his crew. "We are Vraxis. We are the apex predators of the galaxy. These humans got lucky once. It won't happen again." But deep down, in a place he would never admit existed, Krevik felt something he'd never experienced in a hunt before. Uncertainty. The death of Thrak changed everything. Word spread through the Vraxis ranks like poison. Hunters who had approached this assignment with casual arrogance now moved with caution. These humans, these supposedly weak prey animals, had killed one of their own. Meanwhile, the humans reacted differently to their victory. There was no celebration, no triumph. Instead, they became focused and methodical. Taman gathered the leaders around Thrak's captured equipment. Minho was already taking apart the plasma weapon with careful hands, studying its construction. "It's surprisingly simple," the young engineer muttered. "The power cell connects here, the focusing chamber is here, and the trigger mechanism is basic pressure activation." He looked up. "I can't make more of these, but I can modify them. Maybe even create something new from the parts." Jiwan examined the communication device. It was still receiving transmissions from the Vraxis ship in orbit. She couldn't understand the language fully, but the tone was clear. The aliens were angry and confused. "Good," she said quietly. "Confused enemies make mistakes." Yejin studied the scanner, fascinated by its technology. "This is how they see us. It reads thermal signatures and biological markers. But look at these settings. They've calibrated it specifically for human body temperature. If we could alter our heat signatures somehow—" "Mud," Taman said. "The cold mud from the streams. We already know it works for short periods. What if we combined it with those broad leaves you found?" "Create insulting layers?" "It might work," Hyejin agreed. "At least enough to confuse their scans for a few crucial seconds." Over the next week, the pattern of the hunt shifted dramatically. The Vraxis had always fought as individuals or in small groups, each hunter seeking personal glory. The humans fought as a collective, every person playing a role in a larger strategy. When Vraxis warriors entered a section of forest, they found the area seemingly empty. Their scanners showed nothing. Frustrated, they would move deeper, searching for prey. That's when the humans would strike. Not with direct attacks. The colonists had learned that head-on confrontation with Vraxis meant death. Instead, they used harassment tactics that wore down their hunters psychologically and physically. A Vraxis named Kresh experienced this firsthand. He entered a hunting zone alone, confident in his abilities. Within an hour, strange things started happening. Rocks flew from the trees, striking his armor. Not enough to hurt, but enough to startle. He would spin toward the source, raising his weapon only to find nothing there. He pressed forward. A vine rope suddenly tightened around his ankle. He fell, roaring in anger, and cut himself free. But it had cost him time and energy. He continued hunting. A sharp spike, hidden in leaves, punctured the soft sole of his foot. The wound was minor but painful. Then came the sounds. Humans calling out from multiple directions, their voices echoing through the forest. Kresh couldn't tell how many there were or where they were hiding. His scanner showed thermal signatures all around him, but when he moved toward them, they vanished. He didn't know that Taman had taught the humans to light small fires in different locations, creating false heat signatures to confuse the scanners. After 6 hours of this constant harassment, Kresh was exhausted, paranoid, and injured in a dozen small ways. He'd fired his weapon 20 times and hit nothing. His power cells were nearly depleted. That's when the real attack came. Taman had been tracking Kresh for the entire 6 hours, watching and waiting. He'd coordinated the harassment from a distance, wearing the Vraxis down. Now, with 5 other humans, he moved in for the kill. They struck from above, dropping from trees with sharpened spears. Kresh tried to fight back, his superior strength still deadly even while exhausted. He caught one human with a backhand blow that sent the man flying. But there were too many attacks from too many angles. A spear found the gap behind his knee. Kresh fell. Another spear pierced his throat. The great hunter died in the dirt, killed by prey that refused to act like prey. This pattern repeated across Theta 9. The Vraxis were used to quick hunts and decisive victories. They weren't prepared for attrition warfare. They didn't understand how humans could keep fighting while wounded, keep running while exhausted, keep thinking clearly under extreme stress. The humans, meanwhile, were getting better at killing. Minho had successfully modified 3 Vraxis plasma weapons, creating crude but functional energy rifles that humans could operate. He'd also discovered that the Vraxis power cells could be overloaded to create explosive devices. "It's not very precise," he explained, while demonstrating to a group of volunteers. "But if you wedge this cell into a crack in a rock and trigger the overload, you get about 15 seconds before it explodes. Enough time to run, and enough force to bring down a tree or collapse a small cave entrance." Soman, who'd been a teacher in her previous life, had become adept at training people in ambush tactics. "The key is patience," she taught new recruits. "You might wait for hours, days even. But when the moment comes, you act fast, and you act together." Yuna's medical stations had evolved into sophisticated field hospitals hidden in cave systems that the Vraxis hadn't discovered. She'd learned to treat plasma burns using a combination of local plant extracts and techniques adapted from Earth medicine. Her success rate was remarkable given the circumstances. By the end of the second week, the Vraxis had lost 15 hunters. The humans had lost 130 colonists. The numbers weren't in humanity's favor, but they were far better than anyone had expected. Krevik stared at the casualty reports with growing fury. This was supposed to be over by now. The humans should have been extinct or reduced to scattered, terrified remnants. Instead, they were becoming more dangerous. He called a meeting of his remaining huntmasters. "Explain to me," he growled, "how the weakest prey species we've ever encountered is surviving this long." A scarred veteran named Drax spoke carefully. "War Master, these humans are different. They don't fight like animals. They fight like soldiers. They use tactics. They coordinate. They adapt. They are prey!" Krevik slammed one of his 4 fists on the table. "Prey does not adapt. Prey runs and hides and dies." "Perhaps," another huntmaster suggested, "we should end this hunt. Declare it a special case. There is no shame in—" "No." Krevik's voice was cold steel. "I will not be the first war master in 10,000 years to abandon a great hunt. We will kill every last human on this planet, send down more hunters, send down better equipment, and change the tactics. No more individual glory-seeking. The humans hunt in packs. We will do the same." The decision was made. 40 additional Vraxis warriors descended to Theta 9, and this time they moved in coordinated groups of 8 to 10 hunters, covering each other's weaknesses and overwhelming human positions with superior firepower and numbers. The humans adapted again. Jiwon reorganized their entire defensive structure. "We can't fight them in direct engagements anymore," she announced to the colony leaders. "They've learned, so we need to teach them a new lesson." "What lesson?" Taman asked. "That there's nowhere safe for them on this planet." The new strategy was brutal and effective. The humans stopped defending territory and started attacking Vraxis supply lines and camps. A Vraxis rest station would be operating normally one moment, then suddenly under assault from 3 different directions. By the time reinforcements arrived, the humans would be gone, taking weapons and supplies with them. Vraxis hunting parties would return from failed searches to find their camp destroyed and their equipment sabotaged. Minho had taught teams how to rewire Vraxis technology to malfunction. Some weapons now exploded when fired. Some scanners gave false readings. The psychological impact was devastating. The Vraxis had come to hunt, but now they couldn't sleep safely. They couldn't trust their equipment. They couldn't predict where the humans would strike next. Krevik watched his organized hunt descend into chaos. The longer the hunt continued, the stronger the humans became, and the weaker his warriors grew. On the 20th day, something unprecedented happened. A Vraxis hunting party of 6 encountered a human group of equal number. Both sides saw each other at the same time. Both sides prepared for combat, and the Vraxis hesitated. In that moment of hesitation, the Vraxis warriors weren't sure they could win. They'd seen too many fellow hunters die. They'd learned to fear the creatures they were supposed to be hunting. The humans attacked, and the Vraxis broke and ran. When news of this reached Krevik, he nearly destroyed his command chamber in rage. "Impossible!" he roared. "Vraxis do not flee from prey." But they had. The evidence was undeniable. Deep in the forests of Theta 9, Taman stood before a gathering of over 1,000 humans. They'd suffered. They'd lost friends and family. But they'd also learned, adapted, and survived. "They called us prey," Taman said, his voice carrying through the crowd. "They thought we'd run scared and die easy. But we're humans. We don't give up. We don't surrender. And we damn sure don't stay prey." A cheer rose from the assembly. "We've shown them what we can do when we're desperate," Taman continued. "Now let's show them what we can do when we're organized." The real war was just beginning. Week 4 of the Great Hunt saw the true nature of humanity revealed. The Vraxis had expected primitive prey behavior, panic, flight, quick deaths. Instead, they faced something their entire species had never encountered. An enemy that got stronger the longer the fight continued. Taman had organized the human resistance into 3 operational groups. The Shadows focused on stealth and reconnaissance, tracking Vraxis movements and identifying weaknesses. The Thorns specialized in ambush tactics and hit-and-run attacks. The Roots maintained supply lines, medical care, and the hidden camps where non-combatants stayed safe. But the real weapon humanity deployed was something the Vraxis couldn't comprehend: endurance. A Vraxis hunter named Vorn learned this the hard way. He was tracking a small group of humans through the forest, confident in his superior speed and strength. The prey stayed just ahead of him, visible enough to keep him interested but never quite catchable. Vorn wasn't concerned. Eventually they would tire, and he would close the distance. 1 hour passed, then 2, then 3. The humans were still running, not sprinting, just a steady jog that ate up distance. Vorn's powerful legs were built for explosive speed, not sustained effort. His breathing became labored. His muscles burned with accumulated waste products his biology couldn't process efficiently. The humans kept going. After 4 hours, Vorn had to stop. His body simply wouldn't respond anymore. He bent over, gasping, his vision swimming. The humans circled back and killed him while he was too exhausted to fight. This scene repeated across Theta 9. Humans would identify a Vraxis hunter and simply run, leading their pursuer on a chase that lasted hours or even days. The Vraxis would eventually collapse from exhaustion, and then the prey would become the predator. Hyejin had identified the biological difference that made this possible. "Their muscle structure is designed for anaerobic activity," she explained to the colony leaders. "Short bursts of incredible power, but humans evolved for persistence hunting. We can run for hours because our bodies are built for endurance. We can sweat to cool down. They can't. We win the long game." Taman weaponized this knowledge ruthlessly. Teams of runners, many of them former athletes and military personnel, became the most feared units in the human resistance. They would engage Vraxis hunters and lead them on brutal endurance runs through the roughest terrain on Theta 9, up steep hills that burned the Vraxis' powerful legs, through streams and rivers that cooled human skin but made the aliens uncomfortable, across loose rocks and treacherous ground where human flexibility and balance gave them an advantage over the top-heavy Vraxis. The aliens tried to adapt. They began hunting in shifts, with some warriors resting while others pursued. But the humans adapted faster, coordinating their own shifts to ensure fresh runners were always available. Krevik watched from orbit as his hunt transformed into a nightmare. 6 weeks had passed. He'd sent over 200 warriors to the surface. Less than 90 remained alive. "This is impossible," he muttered, reviewing the tactical data. "They should not be able to do this." His second-in-command, a cautious warrior named Thex, spoke carefully. "War Master, perhaps we should reconsider our approach. These humans are not typical prey. They are nothing!" Krevik's 4 fists slammed down. "We are Vraxis. We have hunted successfully for 10,000 years. I will not be defeated by soft, weak creatures with no claws or fangs." But the data told a different story. The humans were now using captured Vraxis technology better than the Vraxis themselves. Minho had reverse-engineered the plasma weapons and created modified versions that fit human hands perfectly. He'd figured out how to extend the power cell's life and even how to adjust the weapon's power settings for different situations. "Lower power equals more shots," he explained while training new weapons operators. "For hunting small game or as warning shots. High power for when you absolutely need to bring down a Vraxis in one hit." He'd also created something entirely new: improvised explosive devices using overloaded power cells combined with local materials. These IEDs had turned several Vraxis camps into craters. Salmon's tactical training program had produced over 300 skilled fighters who could execute complex ambushes with military precision. Many of them were civilians who'd never held a weapon before the hunt began. Now they moved through the forest like ghosts, striking fast and disappearing before reinforcements could arrive. Yuna's medical network had become so efficient that human survival rates from injuries had increased dramatically. She'd trained dozens of field medics and established protocols for everything from plasma burns to broken bones to infection treatment. The caves serving as hospitals were clean, organized, and surprisingly well-equipped with scavenged Vraxis medical supplies. But perhaps the most devastating human weapon was psychological. Jiwan had recognized early that the Vraxis were psychologically unprepared for prolonged conflict with dangerous prey. Their entire culture centered on quick, decisive hunts where they held all the advantages. They'd never developed the mental resilience needed for a grinding war of attrition, so the humans made sure the war ground on. They attacked at night when the Vraxis were trying to rest. They created disturbing sounds in the darkness that echoed through Vraxis camps, preventing sleep. They left trophies from dead hunters in places where other Vraxis would find them, a reminder that no one was safe. One group of humans discovered that the Vraxis had a superstitious fear of being alone in death. When a Vraxis warrior died away from others, his people believed his spirit wandered forever, unable to find rest. The humans started dragging dead Vraxis away from their kill sites and hiding the bodies where they would never be found. The psychological impact on the surviving Vraxis was profound. Hunters who'd been arrogant and confident 2 months ago now moved with paranoid caution. They jumped at shadows. They fired at imagined threats, wasting ammunition. They argued with each other and questioned orders. Some even tried to flee back to orbit, only to be stopped by their commanders who threatened execution for cowardice. On day 50, a Vraxis hunting party of 8 encountered a human force of 30. The Vraxis had better weapons, better armor, and superior physical capabilities. They should have won easily. The battle lasted for 6 hours. The humans used every trick they'd learned. They fought from cover, never exposing themselves unnecessarily. They used the terrain to channel the Vraxis into kill zones. They rotated fresh fighters to the front while pulling back exhausted ones. Most importantly, they simply outlasted their opponents. After 6 hours of continuous combat, the Vraxis were physically and mentally spent. Their shots went wild. Their reactions slowed. Their coordination fell apart. The humans pressed the attack and wiped out the entire hunting party. When word reached Krevik, he stood frozen in disbelief. 8 warriors dead, 30 humans victorious. The prey had defeated the predators in open combat. "How?" he whispered. Fex knew the answer, even if Krevik couldn't accept it. They fight longer. They endure more. They adapt faster. War Master, these humans are not weak. They are perhaps the most dangerous species we have ever encountered. "Then we will show them true danger," Krevik snarled. "I am done with half measures. Send down our best hunters, our most experienced warriors, and I want every human settlement identified and destroyed simultaneously. No more small skirmishes. We will crush them completely." It was the wrong decision, born from pride and desperation. But Krevik couldn't see that. He couldn't accept that his prey had become his equal. Below on Theta 9, Taman received reports of massive Vraxis troop movements. The aliens were gathering for a major offensive. "Good," he said calmly. "Let them come to us. We know this planet now. They're still visitors, and we've got one more advantage they haven't figured out yet." "What's that?" asked one of his lieutenants. Taman smiled grimly. "Humans are stubborn. We don't know when to quit. That's what made us apex predators on Earth. Not strength, not speed, just the sheer refusal to give up." He looked around at his fellow colonists. 2 months ago, they'd been farmers, teachers, engineers, and families looking for a new start. The Vraxis had tried to turn them into prey. Instead, they'd created an army. "Send word to all units," Taman ordered. "The Vraxis are coming in force. This is going to be the biggest fight yet. Make sure everyone knows. We don't retreat. We don't surrender. We show these alien hunters what happens when you back humans into a corner." As night fell over Theta 9, both sides prepared for the coming battle. The Vraxis sharpened their weapons and checked their armor, confident that overwhelming force would finally end this embarrassing hunt. The humans dug in, set their traps, and prepared to demonstrate one final time that they were nobody's prey. The endurance war was about to reach its climax. 6 months into what was supposed to be a 4-day hunt, the galaxy was watching. The Vraxis had always broadcast their great hunts as entertainment for their empire. Millions of viewers across their territory tuned in to watch prey species struggle and die. It was tradition, it was culture, it was proof of Vraxis superiority. But the broadcast from Theta 9 had become something else entirely. It was a horror show for the Vraxis, an inspiration for everyone else. Other species that had survived previous hunts watched in amazement as humans not only survived but thrived. The Vraxis ground forces had been reduced from 200 warriors to less than 60. Meanwhile, the human population, despite losses, remained organized and combat effective. On Theta 9, Taman stood in what had once been a Vraxis supply depot. Now it was a human command center, filled with captured technology that Minho and his team had repurposed. "We have visual on the main Vraxis force," Soman reported, studying a holographic display they'd taken from a destroyed Vraxis command vehicle. 58 warriors moving in 3 groups. They're converging on our largest settlement." Jiwan examined the tactical situation. "They think we'll defend the settlement, dig in and fight. They're planning to overwhelm us with concentrated firepower." "So we don't defend it," Taman said simply. "We evacuate everyone and let them have an empty camp." "What's the point?" asked one of the newer fighters. Taman smiled. because while they're busy congratulating themselves on destroying our camp, we'll be destroying theirs. It was a bold plan, but by now the humans had earned their boldness. They'd proven themselves capable of executing complex operations that required timing, coordination, and nerves of steel. The evacuation began immediately. Over 500 colonists, including all the children and wounded, moved silently through the forest to predetermined safe zones that the Vraxis didn't know existed. They left behind a camp that looked occupied, fires burning, movement in the shadows, everything designed to convince Vraxis scanners that humans were still there. Meanwhile, Taman led a strike force of 200 fighters toward the main Vraxis base camp, a fortified position on a hill overlooking the forest. The Vraxis assault on the human settlement began at dawn. 50 Vraxis warriors advanced with overwhelming firepower, plasma weapons blazing. They tore through defensive positions and structures, expecting fierce resistance. Instead, they found nobody. The camp was empty except for automated decoys that Minho had rigged to produce heat signatures. "Where are they?" demanded the Vraxis commander, confusion evident in his voice. He got his answer when reports came in from the base camp. It was under attack. Taman's force had spent the night infiltrating the perimeter, using every stealth technique they'd learned over 6 months of brutal warfare. They'd crawled through mud to hide their heat signatures. They'd moved at a pace so slow it seemed impossible to maintain patience. They'd waited hours in uncomfortable positions for the right moment to strike. When that moment came, it was devastating. Minho's explosive devices detonated simultaneously at 6 key points around the base camp. Ammunition stores erupted in chains of secondary explosions. Power generators overloaded. Communication arrays collapsed. In the chaos, human strike teams emerged from the forest like ghosts. They knew exactly where to hit. Hyejin had spent weeks studying Vraxis behavior patterns and had identified which buildings were critical infrastructure versus which were just barracks. The humans didn't waste time on pointless destruction. They hit the medical station, destroying the Vraxis ability to treat wounded. They sabotaged the water purification system. They stole food supplies and weapons. Most importantly, they captured the base's main communication array intact. Jiwon had been very specific about this objective. "We need their comm system," she'd insisted. "It's not enough to fight them here. We need to tell the galaxy what's happening." Within 30 minutes of the attack beginning, the human strike force had achieved all objectives and melted back into the forest. The Vraxis warriors rushing back from the empty human settlement found their own base in ruins. Krevik watched the disaster unfold from orbit and felt something he'd never experienced before: true fear. These humans were no longer prey. They were organized, skilled combatants who had turned his hunt into a war, and they were winning. "War Master," Thex said quietly, "we must end this. The Council is demanding explanations. Other species are watching. If we cannot defeat these humans, our reputation as hunters will be destroyed." Krevik wanted to argue, but he knew Thex was right. The Great Hunt was supposed to demonstrate Vraxis' superiority. Instead, it was demonstrating human resilience, adaptability, and fighting spirit. "One more assault," Krevik decided. "I will lead it personally. We will end this with overwhelming force and honor." It was pride speaking, the same pride that had doomed this hunt from the beginning. While the Vraxis regrouped and prepared for a final assault, the humans were busy with the captured communication array. Jiwon sat before the alien technology, which Minho had modified to be human-compatible. She'd spent hours preparing this message, knowing it might be the most important communication humanity had ever sent. "This is Captain Jiwon of the colony ship New Dawn broadcasting on all frequencies," she began, her voice calm and clear. 6 months ago, the Vraxis Collective abducted 3,000 human civilians for their great hunt. They believed we would be easy prey. They were wrong. She activated the broadcast feed, showing footage that humans had captured on Vraxis recording devices they'd scavenged. The images showed human victories, Vraxis defeats, and the transformation of terrified colonists into effective resistance fighters. "We did not ask for this war," Jiwon continued, "but we will finish it. To all species watching, the Vraxis are not invincible. Their great hunt is not honorable sport. It is murder, and it can be stopped." The broadcast reached across the galaxy. On 1,000 worlds, beings who had cowered before Vraxis' power watched in amazement. The Galactic Council, which had turned a blind eye to the great hunt for centuries, could no longer ignore what was happening. The evidence was undeniable. The Vraxis had underestimated a species and were paying the price. Emergency sessions were called. Ambassadors demanded explanations. Trade agreements were threatened. Economic sanctions were proposed. But Krevik ignored it all. His entire focus was on Theta 9 and the humans who had humiliated him. He descended to the planet's surface with his personal guard of elite warriors, the finest fighters the Vraxis had ever produced. These were not ordinary hunters. These were veterans of 100 battles, trained from birth to be perfect killing machines. Krevik brought 40 of them to Theta 9. Taemin watched their landing from a hidden observation post, studying their deployment through captured Vraxis scanners. "Elite guards," he noted. "Better equipped, better trained, and Krevik himself is leading them. This is their final push." "Can we win?" Somin asked. Taemin considered the question seriously. "In a straight fight? No. They're too good, too experienced. Those 40 warriors are worth 200 of the regular hunters. So what do we do?" "We don't fight fair," Taemin said simply. "We've spent 6 months learning how to beat them. Time to use every lesson at once." He gathered all the combat-capable humans, nearly 800 fighters who had survived the crucible of the last 6 months. They were armed with a mix of human ingenuity and captured Vraxis technology. More importantly, they were united in purpose and hardened by experience. "They're sending their best," Taemin told his people. "So we show them ours, not the best fighters, the best survivors, the best adapters, the best humans." The final battle would not be a single engagement, but a campaign that showcased everything humanity had become. Krevik's elite guard advanced into the forest, expecting to flush out terrified prey. Instead, they walked into a carefully prepared killing ground that had taken weeks to construct. The trees had been modified. The ground had been altered. The water sources had been poisoned. Every meter of terrain had been turned into a trap designed specifically to counter elite Vraxis warriors. Minho's explosives detonated in sequence, not to kill, but to channel the Vraxis into predetermined paths. Hyejin's biological weapons, diseases cultivated from local microorganisms that affected Vraxis but not humans, spread through the elite guards' ranks. And then came the humans themselves, not charging blindly, but executing coordinated strikes with military precision. They attacked from unexpected angles, used the terrain to negate the Vraxis' strength advantage, and most importantly, they never stopped moving. The elite Vraxis warriors were incredible fighters. They killed dozens of humans in the opening engagements. But for every human that fell, 2 more appeared. And the Vraxis, for all their training, couldn't sustain combat for hours the way humans could. Krevik watched his elite guard being systematically destroyed by creatures that should have been helpless prey. He saw his finest warriors fall to improvised weapons wielded by former civilians. He witnessed the impossible, prey that had evolved into predators. "Fall back," he ordered, but there was nowhere to fall back to. The humans had surrounded them, cut off their supply lines, and blocked their escape routes. The great war master of the Vraxis found himself hunted on his own hunting ground. As the sun set on the 6th month of the great hunt, Krevik stood among the ruins of his elite guard. Less than 10 warriors remained alive. Around them, hundreds of humans waited in the shadows, ready to finish what they'd started. "You cannot defeat us," Krevik announced, his translator broadcasting to all the humans. "We are Vraxis. We are—" "Your prey." Taman stepped into view, covered in dirt and blood but very much alive. "Just like you tried to make us. The difference is we learned from being hunted. Did you?" Krevik had no answer to that question. In orbit above Theta 9, Thex received emergency communications from the Galactic Council. The message was clear: end the Great Hunt immediately, or face total economic and military isolation. The Vraxis Collective's choice was simple: pride or survival. Reluctantly, Thex gave the order to evacuate all remaining warriors from Theta 9. The Great Hunt was over, and humanity had won.